The Denver Broncos have big plans for linebacker Baron Browning. Could he be the secret weapon for the Broncos defense in 2022? We take a look how the Broncos could use him as both an inside linebacker and an edge rusher. Plus, what kind of personnel packages can the Broncos put together that gives them the best maximization of the talent and personnel possible? You get that and much more in today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos Country? Good morning, wherever you're at, all across Broncos Country. Welcome back in to a brand new episode of the Locked On Broncos podcast, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked On NFL Network, your team every day from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, joined alongside by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger. Both of us, we cover the Denver Broncos for the Locked On Network and 9 News. Let's ride today, Broncos Country. A lot of news and notes, but hey, Sayre, the biggest topic of discussion here today, the Broncos have a big-time plan here for Baron Browning. I'm excited to break everything down with you here today. My friend, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Cody. Doing really great. You know, I think a lot of us in Broncos country have been kind of sitting, waiting, wishing maybe another pass rusher, right? I mean, we got Randy Gregory, but let's get another pass rusher into the fold. Turns out they have plans for that. Regardless of signing a free agent or drafting somebody, we're going to move Baron Browning to a new position. I personally am a huge fan of it. I can't wait to talk about it. I think fans are going to be excited after hearing what we had to say about this switch.
So Broncos Country, we're going to focus on Baron Browning on today's episode of the show, but just to keep you informed here, what's going on today with the Denver Broncos? Free agent right tackle Brandon Shell, he played the last 2 seasons with Russell Wilson, the Seattle Seahawks. He is in town in Denver here today. He will be meeting with the team and pending the physical, pending the medical stuff and everything like that. If it's a good fit, he could be signed as the team's next right tackle. He would not be a backup. He would be the penciled-in starter. So we'll keep you up to date on that as well if you need any information possible on this signing. But now let's shift our focus now to the Baron Browning news that we had found out. And obviously our good friend Mike Kliss had reported that the Broncos plan to play Baron Browning a little bit more as an edge rusher here in 2022. And I think the first inclination that many Broncos fans thought was they're not going to play him at linebacker. Come to find out, they plan on playing him plenty of both edge rusher and inside linebacker here. Now, I think, Sayre, the big question is well, the Broncos didn't do that too much with him last year. They didn't do that at all with him in 2021. Here's the deal, though. I think now we have to get to the point, Sayre, where we start looking at this Broncos defense, not as the old Vic Fangio Broncos defensive scheme. We have to start looking at it from the Los Angeles Rams defense from last season through a lens of how they operated. And it's very interesting because when you think about it, their linebackers weren't necessarily the blitz-heavy guys or the guys that were covering. They were really trying to send pressure after quarterbacks from their edge rushers in the defensive interior. That's probably become the Broncos' big bread and butter as to how they do it. But they can utilize Baron Browning in both facets here.
I think they can. I really do. And you know, Cody, this name is going to ring a lot of bells for people in Broncos country. Maybe some people have already forgotten about him. But Justin Hollins, you know, the linebacker that was once in Denver, you know, he got signed away by the Los Angeles Rams after the Broncos waived him. And that was, in my opinion, that was a huge mistake. I mean, I thought that was really dumb roster move at the time. But at this point in time, that's water under the bridge. Now you've got an opportunity. You see this LA Rams defensive staff coming in led by Ejiro Evero. And obviously they had a player like Justin Hollins to be able to utilize in this kind of role as they kind of wanted, right? Brandon Staley was a big reason for bringing him to Denver in the first place in the NFL draft. And so then you come in and you say, okay, well, you know, what type of guy could really do this role for us? And Justin Hollins, quite frankly, had a pretty significant impact for the Los Angeles Rams this past season and the year before that. So I think that there's a definite, just kind of a juiced up version of that role that's ready to be taken by somebody with a lot of talent. Baron Browning, very similar measurables to Justin Hollins, very similar, measurables to those of Von Miller even, or Khalil Mack. You look at those guys. I mean, Justin Hollins is just one name, But man, Baron Browning, to me, I think he was born to be a pass rusher. That's just what I feel like, that ceiling and that opportunity has always been there. I was very surprised that Vic Fangio didn't try to do anything with that.
Well, I think a lot of it too probably had something to do with Browning getting hurt during rookie minicamp. I remember that happened. He had a really just kind of freak incident happen, got rolled up on, and missed a good portion of training camp. For him to miss as much time as he did and come along when the Broncos needed him to and play really well, that to me was very surprising to see that. Now he's going to be more acclimated. And look, I think that still he'll probably have a chance to start as the wheel backer in the base package at a 3-4. But I think the Broncos, that they plan to go more nickel and dime, there's different packages there that the Broncos can utilize him in. So, for example, how does Browning's utilization as an edge rusher, how does it impact maybe Bradley Chubb or Randy Gregory? Because these are the two starters at the edge right now for the Broncos. I think it's a very interesting question to pose, but it also presents a lot of opportunity and a lot of possibility for what the Broncos can do to get creative with defensive personnel. And Sayre, I can't wait to break that down here, what the Broncos can do and how they can utilize Baron Browning as an edge rusher coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell the listeners of Lockdown Broncos here today about BetOnline.net, the sponsor of today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. And it's that time of the year again as college basketball's tournament is finally ongoing. We're approaching the Sweet 16. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your sports betting needs and information. BetOnline, they remain the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline also has you covered with all the other sports, hockey, boxing, UFC, and MMA action, and all your sports wagering information needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino games. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to check out all the odds, the trends, and the action at BetOnline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. How will the Denver Broncos utilize Baron Browning as an edge rusher in the 2022 NFL season? This is a question that many in Broncos country are wondering, especially considering the talent that Denver has with Bradley Chubb and Randy Gregory. We appreciate you tuning in to today's episode of Lockdown Broncos. Once again, we are available free and everywhere to get your podcast in audio format. We're available here on YouTube in video format. If you're watching us for the first time, hit that subscribe button, because guess what? We're going to be doing a live jersey giveaway to one lucky subscriber here on the YouTube channel. Once we hit 10,000 subscribers, we have a Russell Wilson Color Rush jersey that we will be giving away to one lucky member in Broncos country. But one question Broncos country is wondering is, how can the Broncos utilize Browning as an edge rusher? I think the tweet from Mike Kliss kind of caught everybody off guard, because we envisioned Josie Jewell, Baron Browning. It's still going to be a possibility. But in terms of edge rusher situations, we've seen a little bit of an evolution in the NFL, and I think a lot of it too, we saw how Dan Quinn and the Dallas Cowboys utilized Micah Parsons in Dallas. He was primarily brought in to be an inside linebacker. Then they had issues with depth at pass rusher. So guess what they did? They moved him to the edge rusher position, defensive end. Well, guess who played on that defense too? Randy Gregory. So Randy Gregory might even have some ideas as, hey, here's how they use Micah in certain situations. That might be good for the Broncos coaching staff. But then again, the Broncos coaching staff consists of a lot of smart guys here. Now, Sayre, I want to throw something out here. The Broncos dime package that allows, I think, for the ultimate pass rush plus pass coverage dynamic with some of the ideas I'm about to throw out here. And I want to know your thoughts here, okay? So out of the dime, there's different packages you can do. You can do what we call a 4-1-6, 4 down linemen, 1 inside linebacker, 6 DBs. And we know that dime is always 6 DBs. That never changes regardless. I want you to think about this 4-1-6 package right here, okay? I wrote it down. Baron Browning, Bradley Chubb as edge rushers here, okay, as 2 of the 4 down linemen. They're going to be on the outside there. Draymond Jones or DJ Jones and Randy Gregory on the defensive interior. Okay, there's that. And then you have a guy like Jonas Griffith or a dime backer like a Caden Stearns, a coverage guy playing that dime backer position, and then your 6 DBs, which could be obviously PS2, Ronald Darby, Justin Simmons, Caden Stearns. It could be PJ Locke, could be a key free agent acquisition that's not yet on the roster here. Let me know your thoughts about that. The 4-1-6 here with some of those names that I threw out there. I mean, and I also forgot, the Broncos still have Jonathan Cooper. They could do anything. They could even put Jonathan Cooper at the coverage linebacker spot. So I don't want to get too excited, too ahead of myself, but your thoughts initially.
I mean, good luck getting rid of the ball in less than 3 seconds with that group out there, right? I mean, that's the key is getting into those passing situations where you can utilize that kind of package and utilize that kind of, speed for lack of a better. I mean, that's a ton of speed, and it gives you so many opportunities right there to say like, hey, we're going to bring this guy from this angle. We're going to bring this guy from this angle. And what does Ejiro Evero say? If we can't get there with 4, we're going to bring 5. We can't get there with 5, we're going to bring 6. So I think when you talk about that group of guys specifically, just being able to have that package out there on the field at one time is going to be so exciting, because where's it going to get home from is the big question, because somebody's getting home in that situation. It's tough to block. And we know even Josie Jewell, he's really established himself as a blitzer as well. So even if he's that dime linebacker out there or whatever, sending him on a blitz as well and dropping. I mean, Baron Brown, and we saw him a couple reps this last season, Cody, in the nickel. So we know that he could fake like a pass rusher and drop out into coverage and do that kind of stuff. So I just think creativity is the key here, right? We know Vic Fangio's defensive scheme was awesome for a lot of players. It's a great fit for so many players. It made so many players better, and it's one of the best defensive schemes in football. And I think one thing that we need to see more of is that creativity of utilizing your defensive players like offensive weapons. Like I'm just spitballing here, Cody, but maybe like thinking of a defensive version of like a Deebo Samuel, right? Like somebody that you can involve in a variety of different ways and make offensive coordinators crazy, because where's 56 coming from? Where are they putting him on this play? I really do feel like Baron Browning can be that kind of piece for your defense, and thinking about that unit that you just described, that gets me excited.
So there's the 4-1-6, right? Let me tell you a little bit more about the 3-2-6 here and what the Broncos do with Baron Browning specifically as an edge rusher. I mean, one of the lineups can be particularly Baron Browning, DJ Jones on the interior playing the 0 or the 1, and then you have Draymond Jones, or you could go Baron Browning, Randy Gregory in the defensive interior, and then Bradley Chubb. Like, we're talking about just versatility all around. And then, not to mention, you can drop several guys back to the linebacker spot, which I imagine in pass coverage situations, we mentioned how underrated Josie Jewell's actually been, contrary to the narrative that most of Broncos country believes that he can't cover as a tight end. But then we're going to see a lot more Jonas Griffith, I think, in those situations. Then what we saw with Caden Stearns last year is that dime backer. The Broncos bring back Kareem Jackson. I imagine we'll see a lot more Caden Stearns in that dime role specifically. So there is that possibility. In Broncos country, I want to know what your thoughts are, and I know Sarah's eager for it as well. When we talk about the different versatility packages that the Broncos can utilize with Baron Browning as an edge rusher. But what if the Broncos want to use him as an inside linebacker in key passing situations? How does that work in these different dime packages? You're going to get that from Sayre, Bedinger, and myself coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about the other sponsor today's episode, Locked On Broncos. That's our good friends over there at rockauto.com. And if you need anything for your vehicle, rockauto.com, they have everything that you could be looking for your vehicle, whether you need something for a project that's in the garage that you're working on, or if something goes wrong in your vehicle and you need new parts, rockauto.com has you covered, because they have prices that are always reliably low, whether you are a professional or a do-it-yourselfer. You don't have to spend 50%, 60%, or even 100% more at local chain auto parts stores or car dealerships ever again when you have access to rockauto.com at home and in your pocket. So go to rockauto.com today, see all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked On Broncos in there. How did you hear about us box? So that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's episode of Locked On Broncos, once again, Broncos Country, thank you so much for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. Both Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we appreciate every contribution, every interaction we get from all of you all across Broncos Country. But Sayre, continuing on with the news that we found out yesterday about how the Broncos plan to utilize Baron Browning, we just took a look at how the Broncos can use him as an edge rusher, which packages and dimes specifically could the Broncos get the best value in a NASCAR package potentially with the perfect combination of pass rush and pass coverage. It's certainly exciting to think about. But now let's say the Broncos wanted to use him in those situations as a linebacker. Here's how they can do it here. And I think that you have a combination of athleticism, especially with Baron Browning as a linebacker. We talk about RAS here all the time, Sarah. Baron Browning's RAS score was much higher than Micah Parsons. So kind of raises the bar a little bit for creativity and what the Broncos can do here. I'm going to talk about the 4-1-6 here. Obviously, that's going to be 4 down linemen, 1 linebacker, which that 1 linebacker would be in this point and in this scenario, it would be Baron Browning. Now, likely he would be a linebacker in man coverage, or he could be playing spy, depending on which quarterback you're tending on, trying to play, or you could just be the extra guy covering the underneath the crossing patterns there. We call it the middle hook, the spy zone there. That's where he can really do it. But more than likely, if he has to cover anybody, he's going to be man-aligned on a running back. And in rare instances, if a team goes empty, he may be on the outside if a running back goes far to the outside. I like Baron Browning out there. I mean, he does provide that dynamic that we used to see with Danny Trevathan. And to be honest with you, I don't know what Danny Trevathan's RAS score was, Sarah, but I imagine Baron Browning is much higher than Trevathan's.
It is no doubt about that. I mean, Danny Trevathan, I feel like he was much more similar to Josie Jewell in terms of being an instinctual player and being in the right place at the right time, knowing where the ball is going rather than reacting and getting to the ball faster than everybody else. I really hope that in this instance, I really hope that Baron Browning can become kind of that guy, right? That's a best combination of both worlds. Ideally, this would be an experimental year for him. If you have somebody like Alex Singleton, the free agent linebacker the Broncos brought in, to say, we can rely on you to do some of the other stuff that Barron is not going to do this year, but we want to experiment with him and really get him involved as this off-ball linebacker in the dime package or even in the nickel package. And like you said, Cody, there's so many quarterbacks in this division even that you have to have somebody like Baron Browning that can spy them and keep an eye on them, or keep an eye on these backs out of the backfield. Talk about Austin Eckler. I mean, who's going to cover that guy out of the backfield, right? Well,
Tough.
you maybe the best athlete ever at linebacker. I mean, or one of them at least. So I feel like Baron Browning is in a great position here to be utilized in this versatile role, especially as the off-ball guy. When we're talking about him as an edge player, I think the talent is evident there. There's so many different ways that you could use him as a weapon, but as an off-ball linebacker, to really see him take that next step in his game, I think that's where he's going to be that second contract guy that George Paton likes to get to, is really being that off-ball guy that you can trust to be the only guy out there. Like you mentioned the 4-1-6, right? If he can be that one guy that you can trust to be out there, he's going to become a second contract player. And I just love the ideas and the possibilities with that. It just getting as many great athletes on the field as possible is very appealing to me.
What about the 3-2-6 dime look here with the two linebackers here? So Baron Browning being one of those inside linebackers, pair him up with Jonas Griffith. Those two guys right there in passing situations. Okay, factor those guys in from the coverage dynamic, not to mention the 6 DBs that Denver will have. But I want you to take a look at this pass rush package that's with them in that 3-2-6 here. You have Bradley Chubb, DJ Jones or Draymond Jones. Like I said, you could put either one of those guys there in the interior on the inside, and then Randy Gregory. And you can mix and match Jonathan Cooper. I mean, you can swap a multitude of different guys out, and you can have different personnel for different situations. So let's say you're trying to protect late in a game. Let's say you have a lead or you're up by 3 points, and a touchdown, for the other team would potentially give them the win. And maybe in a late game situation, you find yourself down. You want to try to protect as best as possible, right? So when you go to 6 DBs, is to be able to cover, but you also need to be able to have that bounce to play the run, because sometimes when you go with a dime look, you sacrifice often at times the riskiness of being able to stop the run because of the fact that you may have less down linemen on an offensive line. You may have a 5 offensive lineman front versus 3 down linemen, plus the linebackers will the double team and try to work their way up. That right there is where it gets tricky. But if you have the perfect blend of versatility and run stopping prowess, which the Broncos on paper, at least at this point, they certainly do. Sayre, I think all the opportunities are endless for what the Broncos can do. And I'm really intrigued to see if Ejiro Evero, how creative he really gets with this Broncos defense, because it all goes back to what Nathaniel Hackett said in his opening press conference. For me, when I look at a defensive coordinator, I look at defensive schemes that confuse me pre-snap. Like if I don't know what you're doing before the snap, then it's harder for me sometimes to get a read on what you're doing. So we have to disguise everything that we do. And I think that there's this conversation about the too high look. Denver did everything out of a too high look, but it wasn't just like, okay, they're playing cover 2, they're playing cover 4, they're playing cover 6. A lot of times they could be playing man coverage. They could be playing zero coverage. It's just rotating and replacing, but it's not showing your hand pre-snap. So for me, like I said, Baron Browning is, I think, the perfect weapon for this Broncos defense, Sarah, with his skill set, what he can do. I am very intrigued of being able to see what, in fact, the Broncos do with him and what they have planned for him here in the 2022 NFL season. So Broncos Country, let us know your thoughts down below here on the YouTube comment section, what you think about Baron Browning potentially being the Swiss Army utility knife in Ejiro Evero's defense for the Denver Broncos here in 2022. Plus, we'll have you up to date here today when the Denver Broncos finalize their meeting with Brandon Shell, the right tackle here for the former right tackle for Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, in town visiting in Denver. And obviously, his agent is a former Denver running back, so he's trying to make sure that he comes over. Sayre, I think that barring like a failed physical or medical thing like that, I think it'll be a done deal. So obviously, we can have the right tackle situation to talk about on tomorrow's episode of Lockdown Broncos. How does that sound to you, my man?
I love it. I love it. I'm looking forward to it. You know me, Cody, any roster moves, I'm taking it. So if we can get Brandon Shell in the fold, pencil that right tackle need, just kind of cross that one off. It's another one crossed, and I'm all for it.
Will the Broncos make any more moves this week? Outside of that, that remains to be determined. You know, Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we have you covered every single day, every morning with your morning cup of coffee on your commute to work, during your workout in the morning at the gym. Locked On Broncos is the place that you should come every single day for your Denver Broncos news content coverage. Thank you once again, Broncos Country, for making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. Sayre, Bedinger, and myself, we're back tomorrow for a brand new episode of the show.